Yeah, you're right. That is the crux of the surah, is the essence. The central theme is to be faithful in terms of what you say, you carry out, not to be a hypocrite here, but how the Quran then presents you the argument for it, okay? It's very interesting how it presents the argument to be so, yeah? Is everybody okay with that? Okay. Well, Surah al Saff is one of the 5 surahs that are called Musabbahat. Musabbahat. What's it called? Musabbahat. Why? Because they begin with the tasbih. Sabbaha lillahi ma fi yusabbihu lillahi. These 5 surahs. And there's something very special about them. I'm not going to be diverging too much yet, no? But all these surahs that have peculiarities and groups, there's always something very common in them. Just like the surahs that have haruf muqatta, the broken letters at the beginning of them, or the surahs that begin with a qasr, and so on. Anyway, that's another issue. Let's begin with the Jia. You want to say something?
No, just wake him up.
You want Quran?
No, okay. Okay, fine. Let's begin with the translation, please. And Abu Bakr, can you please read for us, loud and clear?
In the name of Allah, the Caring.
No, do you want?
In the name of Allah, the Kind, the Caring. Put words into action. All things in the heavens and the earth glorify Allah. He is the Almighty, the Wise. Believers, why do you say things that you don't do? It is disliked by Allah what you say things that you don't do. Allah loves the ones who fight in His way in rows upon rows, standing like a solid building. Denouncing community by rejected messengers.
Okay, that's the first. Okay. The first few words, please switch off all mobiles, please. All mobiles off there, no? Okay. Can we? What's the heading I've given that?
Put words into action.
Put words into action, and it opens with this it is quite terse, that, and succinct, to the point, yeah, no? Allah says, why do you say, Ya ayyuhalladhina lima taquluna ma la taf'alun? Why do you say things which you are not going to do? Okay? Kabura maqtan 'inda Allah is very disliked. Allah loathes it. Allah hates it, yeah, no? Maqtan is about hating and disliking, thoroughly disliking and hating something, okay? Loathing it. It's very offensive. So Allah says, it's really bad that you say something, but you don't do it. And of course, this is referring to the hypocrites, all right? And obviously, the address is to the believers, all right? So we're already being told something. It's the believers who can be the hypocrites. Okay? So, it's really warning us. You could be that. Alright? You say things that you do not do. And how does it finish the passage? The first one.
Yeah. It says, Allah loves the ones who fight in His way, who are in rows upon rows, standing like a solid building.
Okay, and it's and this is what Allah likes. Allah yuhibbuna. What does He love? He loves those who it's interesting. He uses who solidly saffan marsusa. Okay, they're really solidly firm in their commitment. Okay, and the hypocrites, were were a menace for the Muslims in Medina. And there is the Surah At-Tawbah is all about the Munafiqs. And if you, inshallah, when you open my translation, you will see there are at least 15 headings about the Munafiqs. they are liars, they are cheaters, they are cowards. They're always scared. They're not willing to make sacrifices. They're miserly. They're backbiting. They're planning. They are deceitful. All those things. And even in the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, there's 11 verses from وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يَقُولُ آمَنَّا to يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ اعْبُدُوا. Those 11 verses are all about the munafiqs. If you want to understand what hypocrisy is, what pretension is, what acting is, what not being real is, then read those there. No? So the first 11 verses, the 11 verses of Surah Baqarah, and then Surah Tawbah. Surah Ahzab also has a big chunk about the munafiqs. And then there is a whole surah called Al-Munafiqun as well. There's a lot about munafiquns in the Quran. Why? So much about them. Actually to warn us, because that is one place where we will fall into, all of us. We can fall into those and have those qualities of the munafiqs. Okay? Those munafiqs were, of course, the munafiqs that the Quran talks about at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They were, particularly wretched, and they had all these things. And finally, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam got so fed up that he actually had to mention their names. So they were mentioned by name and told to leave the masjid. That is how, angry Allah and Rasul. That's something that you can't read the Prophet, the most gentle, the Rahmah, could do, but no longer could he tolerate this kind of nonsense and this kind of behavior from them, so much so that he eventually called them by names and said, leave. Okay. We've had enough of your nifaq, your hypocrisy. And so, yes, some of the Mufassirin actually talk that those were munafiqs that we would never see today amidst us, inshallah al-Aziz. And one of the reasons is because there was the personality of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The most beautiful, the most wonderful, the most gentle, the most kind, the most loving, caring, and wonderful in every sense. And yet, they couldn't see that. They were so blind and so foolish. They couldn't take advantage of, being true obedient servants of his. And so that is a category in its own. There's no munafiq like the munafiqs of Medina, all right? But still, that doesn't mean we can't fall into that trap. That's why the Quran mentions it. Why is the Quran telling us about the munafiq so much? Why? Because there is every possibility that all of us can fall into that nifaq, right? Or at least have some qualities of that kind. And we need to be guarding ourselves. So that's the first point to remember about why Allah describes them. Why does Allah describe the Jews and the Christians in so much detail? And their checkered history and their mistakes and errors. Why does it describe? Just to tell us. In fact, the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah opens with that. The whole Spara, first juz is all about the Jews and their mistakes and their offensive against Musa and their disbelief and denial of the revelation in many ways. Okay? Just to warn them. So, effectively it's telling us, learn from history. Okay? There's always a great lesson there. All right? So that's the opening of Surah al Saff, that, do what you promise to do. Keep your word, in other words, keep your... And of course this is the opposite of what? Honesty, isn't it? When you are a munafiq, you're not honest, are you? So this is breaking that golden rule of honesty, the best policy. Eh? So that's why it's so condemnable. Right? So already you can see that this is both a moral vice as well as a spiritual vice, in the sense that you're in a way your faith in God is so weak that you don't believe that He's watching you, and you can hide your evil intentions inside and act differently. See, this is the real problem with the munafiqs, inshallah, you'll see, is, they were pretending to be followers of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, okay? But they were disloyal. Okay? They were, yes, And this was proved, for example, when in the Battle of Uhud, 750 of them deserted. If they came to the battleground of Uhud, they were there. And when the time came to fight, they said, no, we're not taking part. And they just walked back. This was the wretchedness, of nifaq, that you could be so disloyal. And yet the Prophet tolerated them even for many years. The naming happened actually after the Battle of Tabuk in the 90th year of Hijrah. So 6 years after, he kept patient with them. But that was the patience of Rasulullah with them, really. It was amazing kind of patience. But, this is about loyalty. The real problem with the Munafiqs was they were disloyal. Seriously, that was the major problem with them. In Ahzab, it's about the battle of Ahzab, or the Confederates, Khandaq, Jangi Khandaq, and again their disloyalty. They were willing to support the Mukkans again. All right. I hope you understand something. Disloyalty. What was their problem? Real problem was not loyal to their city, not loyal to their leader, and this would be called treason. That's what it would be equivalent to treason. And nowadays, in any country, if you speak out against the army of that country, isn't that true? Brother Malik knows more than anyone else in Syria. You spoke truth against the army of Assad, and you regarded as the fifth column. You were the traitors. Isn't that right? Now tell me, 4 million of us living here, British passports, benefits, and still we say we don't like them. This is our madness, seriously, Isn't that disloyalty as well? In fourth generation. And we'll still say, no, British Army, How can we be, you think of even cooperating? So if they then turn around and say, you're the fifth column, you're traitors here, and you have Islamophobia, I don't know. I'm sorry, you can disagree, you don't have to agree with me here, but I'm just pointing out to you something what made the Munafiqs most disliked was their disloyalty to their city. If you can't defend your city and your country and not, supporting those who are defenders of it, I think you need to really re-examine your position. That does not mean, I'm not saying that means, we agree with every foreign policy of this. That's not the point. The point is, you still have to say, I am a defender of this country, and anybody who defends it, I will stand next to them. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm not saying we agree with everything that happens and they want to do, but what I'm saying is, I'm pointing out to you why the Munafiqs were who they were, and utterly disliked by the Muslims, because they never stood beside them when the time came, and they were always criticizing them. Their criticism was always about, why does he have to go and fight the Mukkans? Why does he have to go and do this? Why do we have to do this? So, and we need to really re-examine and look at our own position very seriously, okay? And I'll tell you, the Muslims of India are not doing that, The Muslims of India are not doing what some of us here, would like to do with the British, and so we need to really examine and think. So anyway, next part, Mashood, what's the heading?
Denouncing communities that rejected messengers. Remember when Musa alayhi salam said to his people, my people, why do you offend me? Yet you know I am the messenger of Allah sent to you. When they deviated from the path, Allah led their hearts astray. Allah doesn't guide the sinful people. Also, remember when Isa alayhi salam, son of Maryam, said, Israelis, I am Allah's messenger sent to you, confirming what you already have of the Torah, and I give you good news of a messenger who will come after me. His name will be Ahmad. Isa alayhi salam showed them clear signs, but they said, this is plain wizardry.
What have we labeled that heading?
Denouncing communities that rejected messengers.
This is a Madani surah, isn't it? Okay? And here Allah is giving examples again of two great prophets, of which obviously in Medina the Jews were very familiar with, and the Christians there were familiar with, and so were the Muslims. The Quran had been talking a lot about the Jews and the Christians. So here, my translation of Lima tu'udhunani, Musa saying, Lima tu'udhunani, why do you offend me? Mali? And sister, your wife? Your wife's name? Maimuna and Alia. Lima tu'udhunani, how have I translated that? Lima tu'udhunani. Mali? I translated, why do you offend me? I think the better would be, why do you hurt me? Isn't that right? Abba is from hurting, isn't it? I don't know why the other one is insult, but insult wouldn't be right here. It doesn't sound right in the context. Hafsa? Why do you, so Musa is now being criticized by his people. They're not listening to him, all right? And same with Isa alayhi salam. They're not listening to him. And he says to them, Lima tu'udhunani. Why do you offend me? No. Why do you hurt me? How do you understand? Somebody says to you, Lima tu'udhunani Malik. Why are you hurting me?
Why do you harm me? Why do you hurt me? Yeah.
Harming, it would be more better. Why are you harming, hurting? In English, there's an idiom. It's an idiomatic thing actually, I'm asking. Well, in English, what would you say to somebody who does that to you? That's the Arabic of it.
Why are you hurting?
Betray.
Sorry?
Betray.
Oh, that's taking it too far away from the other yu'li. We've got to see as a translator, that would be going too far away. That would be a big interpretation and two-way. Other yu'li. Sorry?
It's still hurt because it's an emotional hurt rather than physical. Not physically causing you pain, but because they're not listening to them after all the experience they've been through, taking them out of
So offend is okay? Why do you offend
I
me?
say hurt because the emotional hurt rather than physical hurt.
Yeah.
It's not physical pain as such, but it's the mental trauma and the emotional hurt.
There's
What would you say, Maimuna?
Because they didn't believe immediately when he said, I am the messenger of Allah, and they asked for so many things that show us Allah. And they said to him, go you and Faqatila,
Yes.
and we're not going. So that's the kind of the offense. It's like not believing that he's the messenger and not believing in Allah.
if I read it, there's this other ayah. كان مريضا أو به أذى من الرأس. أذى is أذى دونني.
Yes.
Adhan means who has injury, head
That's
injury.
fine, yeah. That's fine. It's injuring,
It's about
hurting,
wudu.
injuring,
If your head
hurting.
is injured,
Yeah.
you don't need to make full wudu
That's
as
fine.
anyone else. You do something else.
Hafsa, what do you say? Hafsa Nuri?
I think if we're looking at, if people say, I feel hurt or you've hurt me, I think the hurt captures it quite well.
Yes, I think it's, in English,
Idiomatic
it's
is
much
captured
more
quite well.
better to say. Inshallah, in my next revision, which is coming out in January, will be, I'll be, why do you hurt me? Okay, rather than offend me. I mean, a lot of the other translations actually use insult, yeah, no? Why do you insult me? But I don't think that's even further away from the reality. Insult is something different, yeah. No? Other is hurting is perhaps more. Okay, so Musa and Isa were, saying this to their followers as well. Why is the Quran giving that example? I think one of the reasons might be that there were some Jews who had actually become Muslims outwardly, all right, and they were actually being reminded that this happened before as well with Musa and Isa, and And of course to the Prophet ﷺ, Allah is using this as a reassurance and a comforting. Don't worry, there's an example, it's happened before in history. So don't worry, this is Allah's constant reassurance of the Prophet ﷺ. A constant theme, in fact. And in this sense, when we look at the Quran is really about Rasulullah ﷺ. Seriously. And the central character is, this is a whole about, it all goes around the Prophet. Everything, He's being heard by the munafiq, so Allah says, well, here is Surat al Saff. Okay? Do you see that? It's and this is the centrality of Muhammad Rasulullah in Islam. Everything revolves around the Prophet. So here this example is really to reassure the Prophet. What's the next section, Jano? Would like to read that, Jano. Let's go. Parveen, next section.
The light of Allah will spread. Who can be more wicked than the one who invents lies against Allah, whilst he is invited to embrace Islam? Allah doesn't guide the wrongdoers. They want to extinguish Allah's light with their mouths, but Allah will spread out His light everywhere, no matter how much the disbelievers dislike it. He is the one who sent His messenger with guidance and the religion of truth, so it will prevail over other religions, no matter how much the idolaters dislike it.
SubhanAllah. This is really so the Prophet ﷺ is again given this great news that the light of Islam will spread. No matter how hard people try, okay? They won't succeed in extinguishing the light of true love. And it's interesting. Who can be more wicked than the one who invents lies about Allah? Yet Allah is inviting them to. Yes. وَهُوَ يُدْعَى إِلَى. Allah invites them to Islam, to peace, and they remain stubborn in their ways, fixed. Okay. Allah doesn't guide those who are wrongdoers. It's interesting, this word zalim and wrongdoers. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on this, and for me it's perhaps a remnant of my 40 years of reading Quran translations from Pickthorpe to Abdul Halim Diana and all those translations, but I can't find another alternative to zalim equals wrongdoers. Anybody can think of another? Zalim is of course somebody who's unjust, and also in Arabic, and in the Quranic sort of sense, it actually means to put something in the wrong place. Okay, your topi should be on the head, and if you put it on your feet, then that is crazy. Okay, that's the wrongdoing of it. Okay, putting it. So the wrongdoing is there. All right, so it has the idea of, and any other alternatives to, zulm and zalim, Habib?
Persecuted too far.
No, but this is not about persecuting others, it's doing wrong to yourself as well. Okay, so zulm is against yourself as well. Injustice. Yes, you're doing injustice yourself. Wrongdoing.
Transgressors.
Sorry?
Transgressors.
Yeah, transgressors is another one, but it's a big word and it just doesn't fit into the transgressors in that sense. Yeah. So that's why I'm stuck with the wrongdoing. Evil, wicked. I've used wicked as well for that. Sometimes woman azlamu, who can be more wicked, but really it's so difficult. But anyway, this is where I think we have to develop our Islamic English, seriously, vocabulary, where, but anyway, we'll press on that. But the yuriduna liyutfi'u nur Allah, they want to extinguish the light of Allah. So what is the light of Allah? Islam, Quran, Muhammad Rasulullah. Okay. That is the Nurullah, isn't it? These are all meanings can be, all of those. It's inclusive of all of them, right? So they want to extinguish, they want to get rid of, of this light of Allah. But Allah has another plan. His plan, Wallahu mutimmu nurihi. What did I, in my translation, what did I write? And Allah wants to? Allah wants to spread His light everywhere. Yes, I used the word, Allah wants to spread His light everywhere. Yet, the meaning is that mutim is to take to its perfection, to complete it actually, to complete it. I didn't use that intentionally because I just thought, and Allah wants to complete His light. What does that mean? Allah wants to complete His light. Or perfect His light. Do you know, does it mean anything? But when you use, Allah wants to spread His light, I think that there's a meaning, and that's why I put a footnote there. So if anybody wants to be critical of me, they at least can see that in the footnote. I've given that other explanation of it. But the idea, Wallahu mutimmu nurihi, Allah wants to spread the light. I'm using the operative meaning of it. The operative meaning is that, Allah wants to really spread it, doesn't it? It's not about, yes, Allah will complete it, of course, yeah, He'll perfect it, yes? But the point is, He wants to, the light has to spread really, doesn't it? Does that make sense? Anybody sort of disagree with that not making sense? So here, what I'm trying to do is, I hope you can see in my translation, trying to unpack some of the idioms, Arabic idioms, and make them simpler as well. And what I'm trying to search for really is good English alternatives as well. Yes. Yeah, disperse is physics, dispersion happens in physics. It's a complicated word actually. and I say my job is to use plain English. So that's why I wanted to use simple English, plain English. Yes, disperse.
Can we use fulfill?
Allah wants to fulfill His light. How does that mean? Fulfill light. Yes, I think this is where this is where the Arab will get stuck. He wants to use the Arabic idiom, but it doesn't exactly translate into English in the sense. So if you try to translate the idioms into another language, that's a bad practice. And that's what a lot of translators have done. And you've got to avoid that. But as I say, I have put it in the footnotes. If anybody wants to check that, they can do that. All right? But it's trying to find a proper language so it's understandable. Is everybody with me?
Spread goes very good with light.
Yes.
That's what
right.
you do, you spread light.
Yeah, light spreads naturally, doesn't it?
And it fulfills.
And no matter how much the idolaters dislike that, no matter how much the materialists dislike that, okay? The society dislikes it. It doesn't matter, Allah's not concerned about their dislikes. Okay? And then something else is really fascinating. هُوَ الَّذِي أَرْسَلَ رَسُولَهُ بِالْهُدَى. Allah is the one who sent His Rasul with guidance and what else? وَدِينِ the truth religion, okay? بِالْهُدَى وَدِينِ الْحَقِّ, the true religion. Why? لِيُظْهِرَهُ عَلَى الدِّينِ كُلِّهِ. To make it, in order to make it, to prevail. Oh, God, I don't want to avoid that, but anyway, that's not a... لِيُظْهِرَهُ should really be to make it triumphant, to make it victorious, to make it dominant, to make it override. Okay? Rather than prevail, but prevail is it's the right way. It's not wrong with it. It's just that it's a difficult word, and I don't think it brings out the yuzhirahu to make it dominant over others.
To overshine.
Yes,
Prevail. Yudhir, it implicates the meaning that there are still other religions, but Zahir is Islam, which is the apparent. So, يظهره على الدين كله, to make more, to overshine all other, rise above all other.
Yes, the prevail in some ways captures it, but I think it has to be more forceful than that, dominate.
Replace.
Outshine.
No.
It's not replacing.
Replace would be totally different. Yeah. Izhar is about, Azhara yuzhiru izhara, is actually being victorious as well. Okay? It will win over other religions. And I think that is what is happening now, to be honest. And this for us is a good news. And this verse, I use it as a, the Quran forecasting the everlasting nature of Islam to the Day of Judgment. لِيُظْهِرَهُ عَلَى الدِّينِ كُلِّهِ. It will actually dominate and prevail over. That one. Did I say prevail over?
Yes.
Yes.
That would be there, okay. Prevail over other religions. Yes, it will be dominant. And alhamdulillah, it's our fault, Muslims, of not proving that. We are, alhamdulillah, the deen of Islam is now prevailing. In the British law, every month or every now and then, new laws are being passed, which are very Quranic laws. Okay? For example, the Disability Act. Okay? These are very Quranic things. Right? The Quran talks about how to respect the vulnerable, and the gullible, the disabled. Okay? But about pluralism and diversity. The Quran is more clear about diversity, pluralism than any book of its time, to be honest. It was far ahead. It was already giving those ideas, and today those are now becoming part of the legislation of this country, day by day. The UN has already implemented most of what the Quran was stood for and stands for, really. And this is something which will keep on happening, inshallah. So my understanding of this is, this is really, the deen of Allah will never perish or dwindle. The Muslims might be weak and might even be destroyed, but the deen of Allah, after all, it's about the deen of Allah that prevails and will always be strong. It's not about Muslims, okay? That's a totally different category of people, Muslims are something else, all right? And you have the Mughal Muslims, you have the Ottoman Muslims, you have the Abbasi Muslims, you have the Umayyad Muslims. Yes, they all have their own characteristics, they all have their own peculiarities, right? They all rose and declined, because of their own peculiarities.
So when deen of Allah will prevail,
Sorry?
when deen of Allah will prevail, the followers, what will you call them? Muslims or not?
Of course, there will be Muslims. There will be Muslims. There will be Muslims. But here, the promise is not for the Muslims to prevail. The promise is that the deen of Allah will prevail. And therefore, those people, who are, there are people who also want to see Islam becoming dominant through politics as well. Okay? I'm not saying they're wrong, okay? But I believe that everybody has the right to, express their political views and how they see things happening there. So let's be honest that everybody has the right to have that view that Islam has. It has, in Muslim countries and Muslim majority countries, the Muslims have to live by that law, and they want to live by it anyway. That is their democratic right. But here, the promise is from Allah that it's my, I have taken this on myself that I will make my deen prevail, and He's going to preserve. The book is preserved. Its way of doing things are all preserved, alhamdulillah. Say alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Yes, we should be proud, alhamdulillah. And therefore, I don't need to worry. I don't need to fret over protecting the deen. Allah says, "Nahnu nazzalna dhikr wa inna lahu lahafizun." We revealed it. We will protect it. We are its protectors. So I don't need to worry about Islam, although I have a responsibility to serve the community and to guide them and to correct them. Yeah? And that is what I'm worried about. How well are we guiding, how well are we bringing people back to Allah? Okay, that is our responsibility. So this last section was what's the title of it? Waris? Third section?
The light of Allah will spread.
Yeah, the light of Allah will spread. Okay? Again, a reassurance to the Prophet ﷺ, promise to him. Don't worry, see how Allah reassures him first? Don't worry, look how they treated Jesus, how they treated Musa. Right? So, don't worry. Again, another reassurance to him. Why are you worried about it? Eh? SubhanAllah, this is really, it shows you something very special about Allah as well. He cares about his people. Allah? Yes. He doesn't want his Prophet to feel anxious either. Eh? He wants to relieve him. So this is really amazing. And from this we learn that Allah will take care of me and you as well. Right? Through this, that's the message being given to me and all of us. And this is why you need to read the Quran. With that Allah is speaking to you. Allama Iqbal, rahmatullahi ta'ala, he's the great philosopher and poet of Pakistan of last century. He used to speak, and he says, this is a living book, all right? And read it as though it is being revealed to you, as though, yes. And, his father used to ask him, have you spoken to God today? Have you? Yes. Have you listened to God today? Meaning, this is talking to you. The Quran is talking to you, really. And it's saying to you, this is speaking to you through, of course, the vehicle of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But it's really speaking to you. And that's how you should read it. He says, there's a beautiful couplet of Iqbal. He says, don't be the Qari of the Quran. Qari Quran, everybody knows Sher Yaar hai. Don't be the reader of the Quran, but become the recipient of it. Okay? Don't be just the reader of it. Be the recipient of it. The crucible, the person who's actually receiving it. Eh? Jay? So it's a very beautiful piece. Anyway, okay, we now move to the next part. Yes. This is the fourth heading here. Mazal, can you read that?
Salvation lies in faith and jihad.
Loud. Salvation.
Salvation lies in faith and jihad. Believers, shall I show you a course of action that will save you from a painful punishment. It is you believe in Allah and His Messenger and strive in His path with your wealth and lives. That is good if only you knew. Allah will forgive your sins and admit you into gardens beneath which rivers flow, and into wonderful dwellings in the gardens of Eden. That is a great achievement. You will also get something else that you dearly love, help from Allah and a speedy victory. Give good news to the believers.
Now, the Quran has been talking about the munafiqs and the danger from them. All right, they were very dangerous because they had 750 of them deserted. This was nearly more than a third. Okay, so they were a big force to be reckoned with. So it wasn't a matter of a handful of them. It was a very serious group. Okay, and so you can see why Allah was reassuring the Prophet. Okay, and now urging the Muslims to be really strong and firm in their belief. And here Allah says, "Hal adullukum ala tijaratin." It's really fascinating. And shall I tell you a tijara? Shall I tell you about it? Tijara. Tijara. What is tijara? Transaction. Transactions, buying and selling. It's buying and selling. Transactions, buying and selling. Trading, isn't it? That will save you from a painful punishment. SubhanAllah, So Deen of Islam, which has been talked about as the yuriduna liyutfi'u nur Allah, the light of Allah. It's been called Nur Allah, hasn't it? So here, Nur Allah is tijarat. SubhanAllah, that's really interesting. Nurullah is a light of Allah is the light of Allah can be bought and
So, could be traded.
yes, you can buy the light of. That's a really interesting concept about religion. And it's not the first, it also appears in Surah Tawbah, Inna Allah ashtara min al-mu'minina anfusahum wa amwalahum bi anna lahumul jannah. Allah has bought, Allah has already bought the lives and the wealth of the believers for Jannah. In return for Jannah, for the price of Jannah, He has bought you. It's a very interesting concept again, but here it's very interesting that Allah says that, this tijara, you can buy it and sell it. It's empowering. The whole point is that it's up to you. You have the ability to buy or sell. You are selling your what? Energy, time, talents in return for the Ridwanullah, for the pleasure of Allah. Do you see that? So that's the tijara. It's a very beautiful concept, of transaction. And of course we know that, transactional relationships. Relationships in many ways are transactional as well. Although we'll take them inshallah to a higher level where they go beyond transactional, and that's where morality comes in. Okay? Transactional is where you do something, you work for your boss. Eh? Is that right? Asad, you work for Park Foods. You work 40 hours and they pay you for 40 hours. Eh? Abdul Jabbar, you work for Bud Foods. Eh? You say, I will make you 100,000 naans in a week. 1 lakh ya 2 lakh khane ho. 250,000. He's the production manager at Bud Foods there. So he makes 250,000 naans and we will pay you so much in return. That's transaction, isn't it? That's how we live our lives. And it's very interesting, Allah is using that same metaphor, saying, well look, that is human nature. Okay? I want you to do that as well with me, alright? I want you to do that with me. But don't do that always with other human beings. Always don't do that. Go beyond, and that is where akhlaq comes in. Morality actually takes you to the next level. You don't say to your wife, I work 40 hours, you've got to work 40 hours. Do you do that?
Yeah.
No.
You can
I hope not.
Yes.
I hope.
No,
I think you should do.
Okay. You need to Okay, listen, you haven't heard my story. I'm not finished yet. Listen, before you become defensive. What I'm saying is, you shouldn't say that. Okay, 40 hours from you, I will give 40. You say, no, I will give 50. You give 10. Alright? No, she will say, no, I will give 60. You give 10.
Wow. It's a trade.
Anyway, the whole point is, and that is where generosity comes in. So we don't do, it's not about being fair and equal, it's actually being about kind. There isn't any transaction in it. And when you are kind to somebody, you're not going to, when you see those awful scenes of the destruction in Indonesia, in Aceh, for example, recently, a few weeks ago, and you want to give money, you're not looking for anything in return, are you? So that's kindness, that's generosity, So Allah is telling us that with me, come on, with me you can do this, all right? Do this transaction, all right? Because Allah is always going to be the winner. What do you have to give Allah? Right? But come on, be transactional with me as much as you like. And this is why Rasulullah says, if you read one letter of the Quran, you get 10 merits. Because He knows we are always looking for returns. Right? be transactional with me, but don't be transactional with your fellow human beings. With them be gracious, kind, generous, and so on and so forth. And that's taking it to another level. So this is really interesting concept. هَلْ أَدُلُّكُمْ عَلَىٰ تِجَارَةٍ تُنْجِيكُم مِّنْ عَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ. And then two characteristics of that. تُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ وَتُجَاهِدُونَ. You've got to do two things. Faith, which is firm and strong. Secondly, striving and struggling in the way of Allah. Those are the two conditions for this tijarah. Okay? That we've got to have faith in Allah and we've got to struggle for the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in return, what will He give? It's very interesting. He will forgive our sins. Okay? He will wipe out our sins. And what else? He will give us Jannah in the hereafter. And Jannatul Adn. Which Jannah? Jannatul Adn. Eden. The paradise of Eden. Okay? And then something else as well. Which is what? Nasrun min Allahi. Something that you dearly love. Which is, we want Allah's help and victory. So again, a great promise is being made to the believers, to support the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All right, saying that the munafiqs will do what they do, but you believers, you need to do this. You need to engage in this tijarah. You need to be helping and supporting the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Let's quickly finish this off here. Who would like to? Can we have another reader?
Believers become helpers of Allah.
Believers become helpers of Allah. Yeah.
Like Isa son of Maryam invited his disciples, who will be my helper for Allah's sake? The disciples replied, we are Allah's helpers. So one group of Israelis believed and another denied. We helped the believers against their enemies, so they prevailed over them.
SubhanAllah. Now, Isa and Musa were mentioned earlier on, weren't they? As people who had been hurt by their own followers. But here, this is the beauty of the Quran. It's accurate. It doesn't say all the Christians were like that. All the followers of Isa were like that. Or the people. No, there were people who actually believed him. People who helped him. The Ansar. Okay? And you see, Allah has just said to us, you Muslims, do this jihad, you do this hard work. Okay? And here Allah gives the example of the followers of Isa. They were already there. So I hope you can see how the Quran is in a way persuading, encouraging, motivating us to look, there were those great people who helped Isa and they became his Ansaris, they became his helpers, they became his helpers. Yes, that's the word. It's really Ansari, the helpers of Isa alayhi salam. So what should you become, Muslims? Kunu Ansar Allah. Become the helpers of Allah. This is a great honor to be. And then Allah says that we did make those who were the helpers victorious. Now come back to. Can you see this? The ring now? Can you see the? It opened with. Don't be what? Don't be hypocrites. Don't be people who run away from standing up for truth. And ends with, this is what you should be, the true Ansaris. Okay? People who fulfill their contract, their promise, and keep their word. I hope you can see that sort of ring structure. In fact, if you were to look at the parallels, this is a pen there? If you were to, I hope, when you sit down and have a bit of time, you will look at what I'm saying is the verse 1 to 7, 14 is it, the last one? 14, yeah. This opened with, don't be hypocrites, And one of the characteristics of hypocrite was they are disloyal, they are cowards, they are people who don't keep their word. Isn't that right?
Sure.
And finally it says, be like who? People who are brave. What else are they?
Helpers of God.
They are loyal and they are helpers. And you know, and then it starts talking about again the munafiqs there. And here, you know, if you look at verse 12 and 13, that's about the positive people of Isa al-Islam's followers. It talked about the negative ones, those who offended and hurt. Here is. Are you with me? And then if you go on, you will see, I'm just doing it off cuff here, really. But can you see that? Ring structure? Or symmetry, it's really symmetry there, okay? In the middle, it talks about, verse number 7 is what? Arabic of it? Amali? What's the Arabic? Verse 7. Sorry? Yes. So the most wicked. Is that? Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes. That seems to be the middle. That is the middle of it. Okay. And how the others. I'm going to leave that for you to crack that. Okay. And see the symmetry, Mashood. If you want to understand the ring structure, Hafsa, Naveed, I know you've been reading and writing about it. Huh?
Yeah, I think sometimes there is a ring, sometimes more parallelism.
Fine.
This surah's got parallelism, you can see that. For example, we start off with Wawal Azizul Hakim.
Yes.
Mighty in power.
Yes.
And then you end with Allah is So it starts with the power of God Aziz.
Yes.
Ends with
The helper, the loving,
so
the caring.
it's manifesting the power in the last verse. You can see how the beginning and the end is connected.
Yes. So, yes, so you can see that kind of that kind of ring structure to it. But also parallelism, you can use that as well. Yeah, the same thing. But you know, you can put them parallel, meaning that parallel to this is this. These seven. Do you understand that? That's what it means. You can put them opposite and they will be parallel to it. In other words, they're opposite to it. And you will see that, inshallah. And this is amazing, isn't it? When you realize that this was, you know, I'm sure Rasulullah didn't think there to this is how we would make it parallel or a ring structure. But it's an amazing style of the Quran there, no? A miracle of the, you know, and you see it everywhere, you know, throughout the whole of the Quran. We'll stop here. And any questions?
Where is the name of the surah being taken from? As-Saff.
Rose and rose.
It's there. It's in the first verse or second.
Fight in the rose.
Which verse is that? Which verse is that?
Number 4.
Saffan ka'annahum bunyanun marsus. Rows upon rows. Okay? And again, you know, their row is about discipline. Row is about. So is this perhaps hinting that the hypocrites didn't have that discipline? You should have discipline. Anyway, there's a lot of. I'll leave that for you to reflect and think. And I hope, you know, the whole point was to give you, you know, this beautiful sense of completeness in each surah. Okay, the way it's giving you the message. And it's not taxing. It's not too. You don't have to be a great philosopher. I'm not a philosopher at all. I have no inkling of philosophy. I'm a scientist. You know, we just measure things and weigh things and look at things. That's all. You know, we don't use much of our heads some of the time. So it's not a. You know, it's really quite straightforward. Okay. Any other questions? All right. You know, let's have a